So I'm in London at the Colt headquarters. I'm here with Mirko Voltolini, and we're going to talk about the evolution of Colt's network and the kind of services that's enabled. So Mirko, just tell us what your role is at Colt and how long you've been at the company.
I've been in Colt for 15 years this year, and I run engineering for the company.
Okay.
So I'm responsible for technical development across all technologies.
Okay. So you've been pretty heavily involved in the transition and transformation of the Colt network over the past couple of years. Can you just talk us through some of the sort of key highlights, particularly the last 2 or 3 years with the introduction of SDN and NFV capabilities in particular?
Yeah. Over the last, I would say over the last probably 3-4 years, there's been an acceleration in terms of technological change. It's always been the case in the networking field, but has dramatically accelerated over the last few years. And the investment we have made into software-defined networking and virtualization has been quite important for us. We went into this field very, very early.
Yes.
We started actually 5 years ago or so. And
before people were talking about NFV, you were actually looking at?
Exactly, yeah. We launched a virtual CPU capability before the word NFV was coined.
Right.
So the investment we made has paid back in terms of building a knowledge, because internally we had to understand what to do over the years, and the early investment has paid back, as well as building the foundation from the technological standpoint in what we had to build afterwards.
Okay.
We launched a number of services since then and capabilities internally. We initially focused on improving our operational capabilities and then shifted to making services available to customers. Over the last couple of years, we started with a more externally focused approach. We built our own program called Novitas, where we converge a number of separate initiatives. Since then, we launched 4 different on-demand or software-defined virtualized services.
Okay.
So if you just make the math, is one every 6 months, which is much faster than what typically is the development life cycle. And we actually went through multiple different phases of that. We launched Ethernet on demand, dedicated cloud access on demand, the software-defined networking, and data center interconnect on demand. So 4 different capabilities which are available through a portal, and also can be exported to third parties through standard APIs.
Okay. So you were kind of early, one of the pioneers in terms of bringing SDN and virtualized elements into the network. What was the biggest challenge, or what was the sort of maybe the greatest surprise in those early days in terms of maybe what worked better than you thought, and then maybe what wasn't quite as up to scratch as you'd hoped?
So maybe the biggest challenge was at that time the fact that it's a transformation. So we actually had to go through not just a technological change, but an overall change across the board in the company. As I said, not just technology, but from the people side, from the operational side. So getting the whole company behind us in the very beginning, we've always been innovating in the technical field, but this was quite a shift.
Right.
And changing from a certain way of doing networking to a completely different way was quite dramatic for certain areas of the company. I would say probably most of the areas of the company.
Okay.
So, but as I said, investing early has helped us to get over the initial hurdle and then build on top of it. As a result of that, I think also when we started to get good traction, internal support from the senior management standpoint helped quite a lot to focus the company on this type of initiatives.
Okay. And in terms of the kind of partners that you've worked with in the industry, the suppliers and integrators, have they sort of been able to keep up with what Colt has needed over the years, or has there been, have you found that you've kind of had to wait, that your plans have been maybe slowed down a bit by the ability of the industry to actually deliver to your requirements?
Yeah, interesting question. I think it made me think about the fact that we have often invest into small startups, especially in the beginning. All the big players were not really focused on this, and in fact, we were driving it, and a few others in the industry. And as a result of that, but also by the very fact that you want to innovate, we went to a few small companies which were selected for the reason for having an open architecture and software-based control capabilities ahead of the bigger players. Then, after a few years, the bigger players started to join the ranks of everybody else, and now there is a much better, let's say, overall industry support around this type of transformation. Still, you have to be careful about ending up with a silos-based approach and avoid, again, closed architecture, even though they may look open from the external side.
Okay. And in terms of some of those innovative smaller companies, can you sort of talk about a couple of them, and are you still working with them now?
Yeah, so we launched, just mentioned the last one, we selected Versa Networks for our software-defined one capability.
Okay.
Again, we started working with them 3-4 years ago. They were a very small startup in California, on a very, very small office when we visited them the first time. And we're still working with them. So they've been an innovator, and we actually co-developed capabilities together with them. Being in the very early stage of development, they also engaged us to understand what the customer drivers were and our understanding based on our previous knowledge and investment into this field. Second one I would mention doesn't exist anymore. It's called Scion. Has been bought by Siena. Okay. We have invested early with them in networking with the software-defined capabilities on top of it, which is still pretty much in the network and is now across every single geography we have. Okay. Technology has moved on from there to newer generation, as you would expect, but still the initial footprint is there. Okay.
So what Cyan developed, that's now known as Blue Planet, isn't it,
yes.
within Siena?
Yeah, so more than the hardware is the software capability on top of it, which allowed us to export and expose capabilities for our own consumption and for third-party and customer consumption.
Okay. And then, so you mentioned about the transition within Colt to sort of get on board and understand the new ways of working. What about customers? Were customers able to grasp the new services and understand it and work with them more easily, or did they require a lot of coaching?
As you would expect, at different pace, depending on who they are. Some companies were very early, like us, and very keen to try out new capabilities in a various fashion, mostly in trial phase. And so we work very, very closely with them. We actually engaged quite a lot of customers for our development. Right. Similar to what I mentioned before, we took the approach of we don't want to use the usual model of we build it and then they will buy it. So we engage customers in co-developing the capabilities with us and for us. And so we had a few engagement with a number of multinational corporates in this space. Some others have been on the back foot, more waiting for things to happen. Now you can see the industry is all behind this. Every single enterprise has digital strategy, and that usually involves moving to the cloud and adopting SDN in the network space. Also, I would mention SD-WAN has been quite a surprise. There is a significant market pool as opposed to us trying to position the service to the market. Every enterprise is looking at it from the perspective of optimizing costs and adding flexibility to the WAN capability.
Okay. So, I mean, that is certainly a hot service, I think, for a lot of network operators. Yes. But you also mentioned earlier one of the other services is data center interconnect on demand. Has that been a hot service as well? And how much has what you've done in the network enabled that service to take off?
Yeah, it has been a hot service as well. There has been lots of interest even before the service was on demand. We had a very fast lead time capability, which result from the fact that we have invested into a number of data centers to provide infrastructure in place, and also
just to get, when you say fast, how fast is fast? Fast lead time, weeks rather than months, or?
Yeah, a few days,
Okay.
a few
Oh,
days,
right, okay.
or a few weeks, depending on the opportunity.
Okay.
And that results from, as I said, investing into the shared infrastructure and making sure that the service is ready to be delivered to customer. In most cases, actually faster than customer wanted it. Now we move to the on-demand capability where customers can, after the initial physical delivery, change the service on a self-service basis,
Right.
modify the bandwidth, change the topology, which is, I would say, still early stage. We have a good customer base, but still has to grow, and it's a good capability for us. We're expanding into a number of other data centers to grow the footprint, and that will bring more opportunities for us.
Okay. Yeah. How many data centers are you in now in Europe? It's like
We are present in 700 plus data centers.
Wow.
We have our shared infrastructure in over 250.
Right.
And in the others we connect customers individually.
Okay.
Our own network, so our fiber network reaches 700 data centers.
Right. Okay. And are you getting? So you've been developing services with customers. Are you still getting good feedback from them that's giving you new ideas about how you can take the network forward and engineer in new ways?
Yes, we do. We continuously engage with customers, and I think in a way we are complementary in some way for what we do, because the enterprise space, it's obviously more focused on the internal network than it is on the WAN, and some of those initiatives they have I have influenced what we do. There is lots of commonalities. Again, I mentioned the theme, digital NFV, SDN, artificial intelligence and machine learning also is becoming a significant investment area. We are starting to develop capabilities in this space as well, still in the making, but we will move towards automating more and more of the service assurance side of the network, trying to put in place capabilities that will help us to resolve faults in a automated fashion and basically self-heal the network.
Okay. And is that something that you're developing internally yourself, or are you finding that there are companies out there in the marketplace that can help you?
The marketplace is much more dynamic than it was at the time of SDN in this space. So,
right.
And there are lots of innovative companies. You can mention the big cloud providers, public cloud providers. They've all invested into this space. The challenge for us is to translate that into the telecom world and make it useful. At the same time, the network vendors are investing a lot of time into developing capabilities, so we start to see some early capabilities that will be put in place. So it's a mix. I think it's mostly coming from a combination of external and internal.
Okay, excellent. Well, it sounds like you never get a chance to take a breath with the development of the Colt network, but I'm sure that makes it all the more interesting, exciting. So
yes, it does.
Thanks for bringing us up to date, and look forward to speaking to you again in the future. Thanks,
Harry. Good to see you.